There was a knight. He had proved his worth in his lord's wars, in which he had ridden as far as any man, both in Christendom and in heathen lands, and he had always been honored for his valor. Although he was valiant, he was prudent and bore himself as meekly as a maiden. Never in all his life had he been rude to anyone at all. A young squire, a lover, and a gay youth on his way to knighthood, with locks as curly as if they had been pressed. He was a brown-faced man with a close-cropped head. He knew all there is to know about woodcraft. On his arm was a fine wrist guard, and by one side a sword and a shield, on the other a bright dagger, well mounted and sharp as the point of a spear. There was also a nun, a prioress, whose smile was modest and sweet. Her greatest oath was only by St. Loy. And certainly she was very cheerful, most pleasant and amiable in bearing, and took great pains to behave in a well-bred fashion, to be stately in manner, and to appear worthy of reverence. And with her she had a nun. There was a monk, a splendid sort, an inspector of his monastery's estates, who loved venery, a manly man, capable of being a bawd. There was a friar who was wanton and merry. He was one licensed to beg in a limited area, a dignified man. He had married off many a young woman at his own expense. His cape was always stuffed full of knives and pins, to give to fair young wives. Certainly he could carry a merry tune. There was a merchant with a forked beard. He delivered his remarks very solemnly, always emphasizing how his profits grew. This worthy man made good use of his wits. No one knew he was in debt. He conducted himself in such a stately way with his bargainings and his borrowings. In any case, he was indeed a worthy man. There was also a clerk of Oxford. He gave most of his attention to studying. He never spoke a word more than was necessary, and what he did say was in due form and reverent, and short and to the point, and full of lofty thought. His talk tended toward moral qualities, and gladly would he learn and gladly teach. A sergeant of the law, wary and wise. He was discreet and greatly to be respected, or so he seemed, his words were so wise. F. Franklin accompanied him. His temper was sanguine. He dearly loved a morning sup of bread and wine. It was always his custom to live pleasurably, for he was his own son to Epicurus, who believed that complete pleasure equaled true and perfect happiness. They had a cook with them for the occasion, to boil the chickens with the marrow bones and tart spices and seasonings. He could easily recognize a draught of London ale. He could roast and boil and broil, and fry, make stews, and bake a pie well. Pittman was there, who lived far in the west. For all I know, he came from Dartmouth. He paid no mind to fuzzy conscience. If he fought and had the upper hand, he sent his captains home to every land by water. With us there was the doctor of medicine. In all this world there was none other like him when it comes to medicine and surgery. A good wife was there from near Bath. She was somewhat deaf, which was a shame. Her face was bold and handsome and ruddy. She had been a worthy woman all her life. She had 5 husbands at the church door. She was gape-toothed to tell the truth. There was a good man of religion who was a poor parson of a town, but he was rich in holy thoughts and works. He was also a learned man, a clerk, who would truly preach Christ's gospel. He would teach his parishioners devoutly. With him was a plowman. He was a good and faithful laborer, living in peace and perfect charity. He loved God best with all his heart, at all times, whether he was pleased or grieved, and next he loved his neighbor as himself. There was a miller. His beard was as red as a sow or a fox, and as broad as a spade as well. Right on top of his nose he had a wart, and on it stood a tuft of hairs, red as the bristles of sows' ears. His nostrils were black and wide. He bore a sword and buckler by his side. The reeve was a slender, choleric man. His beard was shaved as close as could be. His hair was shorn around his ears. The top of his head was clipped like a priest in the front. His legs were very long and lean, like a staff. No calf was visible. A summoner was with us there, who had a fire-red face like a cherub in a painting. For he was pimply with narrow eyes. He was as hot and lecherous as a sparrow, with scabby black brows and a scanty beard. His face frightened little children.
With him there was a gentle partner of Roncesvalles. He was the summoner's friend and comrade, who had come straight from the court of Rome. Loudly he sang, "Come hither, love, to me," and the summoner accompanied him powerfully. Never did a trumpet make half so great a sound.